Hello friends! I hope you think I look pretty because you're going to be seeing this face and outfit 3 times in the upcoming week. So that'll be fun. This is Gabby. She's just gonna chill. Let's just get on to this video. I'm gonna be doing my October wrap-up. Like last month, I do have some books to show you, but a lot of the books I have already taken home to my bookshelves there, so the first half of this might be very empty-handed. Let's first start off with a book I read at the library. That book is the Vagina Monologues by Eve Ensler. This book was recommended to me by a lecturer we had during one of my classes. She's the women's study professor. It's all about this woman who interviewed a huge array of women, all about their bodies and their vaginas and their sexuality. This book was amazing. I loved how it had such a vast array of voices that were interviewed for it. I love the way it was written. I love how it was just so real and nothing was censored. It was an amazing example of feminism. Loved it so much. I'm so glad that my professor recommended that to me, and I would recommend it highly to you. You should go get a copy. It was super interesting. I wish it was longer. I have no bad things to say about it, and I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read last month was quite the chunker. It was Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This book took me about 2 weeks of this month to read. It was so long. You read and 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 you read, and there's still so much left to be read. It's so exhausting and so long, but it's worth it. I really did like the characters, and I liked the storyline, and I liked the things that happened in it, and it had great writing. I think my favorite characters are Arya, Jon, Dany, sometimes Sansa, sometimes Tyrion. I wasn't the biggest fan of Eddard or Kat, is that her name? I did listen to this on audiobook, and that was an incredible experience. The audiobook was great. I read some of it, listened to some of it, and it did end up going by quicker than I had thought it would. I gave this book 4 stars. I don't know if I'll continue the series just because I don't know when I'll have time to do it, because the books are such a huge commitment. I do want to try the TV series, but I don't have HBO, and I don't know how that would occur. If you have any legal links to watch the TV show, you should pass them on to me. Did I already say how many stars I gave the book?
I don't think so.
I gave the book 4 stars. The next book I read was Library of Souls by Ransom Riggs. This is the 3rd book in the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series, which follows Jacob. It's a really good series, has paranormal themes, it's historical fiction, it has photographs that are integrated into the story. It's such a really well thought out series, really interesting ideas, amazing writing. Ransom Riggs is one of my top favorite authors of all time. In this book, the writing continued to be amazing. I love Jacob so much. He's such a great main character. I just had a problem with the ending. I thought, first of all, the descriptions of the locations they were going to got a little bit hazy because he started to rely on images of the places that they were going, and it was hard to imagine some of the places they went just because you were told a couple of things about it but then given a photograph, and even though you might think that would help, it didn't. So I wish that we got a little bit more of a better visualization of the world. Additionally, I didn't really like the ending. I think it wrapped up nicely, but almost too conveniently, if that makes any sort of sense. It just seems like a short-term solution to me, and I'm happy with it. Like, I'm okay with it ending there, but it definitely feels like there could be conflict in the future, which is not how I like to end series. I like it to be concrete, everything's a-okay. So that was just a little bit weird for me. I gave it 5 stars. If you haven't read the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, go do it. The next book that I read was one that I've been trying to finish for months and finally remembered to get to it, and that was Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. I went ahead and got the audiobook on Scribd, and it was Helena Bonham Carter, and it was beautiful. It was so sassy, it went by quickly, it was amazing. So if you're having trouble getting through this book like I did, go grab the audiobook narrated by her. It was fantastic. But anyway, I ended up liking it so much more after I picked up reading the audiobook. Anne has such a relatable and sassy and teenager voice. I was not expecting that. She's just so full of sass. I didn't expect I would be able to relate to her that much, especially because she's from, what, 1930? That's several 80 years ago? I don't know, I can't do math right now, but it's really interesting to see how she compares to me. And I finally understand why this book is on like 100 books you need to read before you die, because it is, in the end, such a good experience and you get so much out of it that I wasn't expecting I would enjoy it that much. And part of that is because, I might have mentioned this briefly when I read This Star Won't Go Out by Esther Earl, but reading things like this where you have a story about a person that's so happy about life and they have plans and goals and aspirations and they're talking about why they have such excitement for life, and then at the end of the book you hear this person dies. It just shatters me. This video is done. Bye everyone. Nothing like a Shatter Me reference to interrupt your really heartfelt discussion about beautiful books. It's so frustrating, and I ended this book and just was crying because it's so irritating and heartbreaking for things like this to occur after the entire book they've been talking about how much they love life, and well, I mean, it's Anne Frank, she wasn't loving life, but she was saying like, whenever I get married and have kids I want to do this, and she has a little fling with the boy that they're with, and it was and then you read afterward, I googled what happened to the boy and he died at the concentration camp, and it makes me so mad I was crying. It's not fair, and books like that just anger me to no end. Even then, I think it's so worth it to read and I would highly recommend it. It is truly a great book if you do have the chance to pick it up. I ended up giving the book 4 stars just because I did feel it was a bit slow in the beginning. The next book I read was Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This book was for my book club for college, for the club I'm in, book club. Alright, repetitiveness. I'm gonna go ahead and disclaim right now, I would have enjoyed this book so much more if I wasn't horribly spoiled. I got spoiled before I bought the book, and then I got spoiled again discussing it at book club. So reading this book, I was just so unenthusiastic. I knew what was going to happen. None of the foreshadowing affected me. I was feeling very annoyed the entire book, and so I was just forcing myself to finish it. That being said, I do think the writing was good, and it really reminded me of Brave New World, which is one of my favorite classics of all time, and I think if you liked Brave New World you would really like this, because it's very sci-fi. It's about kids that are from a same upbringing on the English countryside. It's a very remote boarding school type deal where these people raised them a certain way, and they're kind of discovering later on in life why they were brought up the way that they were, discovering secrets, mysterious sci-fi, etc. I only ended up giving this 2 stars, but again, I'd recommend that you check this out if you like sci-fi or Brave New World. The next book that I read was Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. This book follows a girl who has a disease which I can't remember, but it makes her allergic to practically everything on Earth, so she has never left her house in like 17 years. One day a boy moves in next door, and that starts the intrigue of wanting to get outside and go explore and get to know him and things like that, and so it just follows them and their adventures and her doing crazy things. I thought this book was lovely. I thought it had amazing writing. It kind of reminded me of John Green / Jennifer L. Armentrout, if that's something you're into. It was so fast-paced. This was really funny. I loved the way it was narrated. I really liked the main character, whose name I can't remember for the life of me. I absolutely loved Ollie, who was the boy that moved in next door. I just mentioned that I felt like this book reminded me of John Green. What I liked about this book is that whereas John Green writes characters that are really pretentious and almost too wise for their age, Ollie was really realistically written, and he was very wise, but it was age appropriate. So he was 16 or 17, I forgot which one, but he was smart for his age, but it wasn't unrealistic. And I thought the characters in this book were just done so well, so relatably and so realistically. The first half of this book was amazing. I sped through it. It was interesting, it was funny, the characters were great. The last half got a bit unrealistic and predictable, though. This book had so much potential for me. I really liked the characters and everything in it, but the plot, if it was tweaked, I think it would have been so much more amazing. We could have had an amazing plot twist, we could have done all these things and not had it been predictable. I ended up giving this book 4 stars for that reason, but I did really like the characters and writing, and I would highly recommend it. So now we enter the part of the video where I have books to hold up and show you. So the next book I read was The Ask and the Answer by Patrick Ness, which is the second book in the Chaos Walking trilogy. This series follows a world that's controlled by men. There's actually only men in their society, and it's where they can all hear each other's thoughts, there's talking animals, all that good stuff. This continuation I felt was not good, but not bad. It's not the most amazing thing I've ever read, but on the other hand, I really don't have anything bad to say about it. The writing style's cool. It has a very slang vernacular where some things are spelled wrong and some things are like "yer." At first it really bothered me, but you get used to it, and since I listened to this on audio, it really wasn't that big of a deal. If that's gonna bug you, I would avoid this series. But the writing is cool, and I do like the idea and the characters, but it's just meh. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I gave this book 3 stars. The next book that I read was The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This book follows a boy whose family was murdered, and then he ends up getting raised by ghosts in a ghost yard. Graveyard. I read this book because it was getting to be the end of October and I wanted something extra spoopy, and this definitely filled that role. It was really great. It just had the perfect tone for the book I was looking for. Sometimes I felt the writing was a little bit too complicated, such as I would read a sentence and then go, wait, what? And have to reread it, and that took up a lot of time, so therefore I got the audiobook. It fixed everything. Audiobooks are great. Because this was a children's book though, I did think that it was a little bit predictable. It wasn't the biggest problem I had with this book, it just made it sort of more light and fun. I gave this book 3.5 stars. It was great for the mood that I was in. I loved the illustrations. I thought it was funny sometimes, and it was just cute, so I did like it. The next book I read was something that my friend borrowed to me, so I don't have it, but that book is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. This book follows a girl whose family lives off the coast of Louisiana, and so it's about her and her husband and her kids, and it's all about feminism, all about her being stuck in this family dynamic, being controlled by her husband. I loved this book. This is one of my new favorite books of all time. Kate Chopin is one of my new favorite authors of all time. This is probably going to make it to my top books of 2015, and a classic has never done that before. This is probably the #1 most beautifully written book I have ever experienced in my entire life thus far. I typically am not the biggest fan of classics, and I will admit it took me a couple of weeks to get into this because I kept reading it then getting distracted, but finally when I made myself just push through it, it was so beautiful. I can't get over just the prose. I highly recommend this book. It's free in the Kindle store, so if you have any smartphone, just download the Kindle app for free, get that book for free, read it, enjoy it, talk about it with me. I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars. So good. The next book that I read was End of Days by Susan E. This is the 3rd book in the Angel Fall series, and it follows a girl named Penryn who's living in a post-apocalyptic world that was overrun by fallen angels. It's really cool. It's such a cool setting because not only is it fallen angels, but there's also a very dark sci-fi aspect behind it that you get to find out later on in the series. And it's really new and interesting. I love the characters in this book, Penryn and Rafi. Over the series, there's just such a great development of their relationship, and all 3 of these books are just so fast-paced and amazing. This book in particular, again, it was fast. I love the relationship. I ended up reading this book so fast. I think I stayed up in one night and read almost half of it without even realizing that I was getting that far into it, just because Rafi and Penryn's story is so entrancing, so beautiful, so lovely. The ending of this book, however, was also fast, but in this case just a little bit too fast for my taste. I wish that we could have had like a chapter or 2 more just of explanation on what happens to the characters. That's kind of a selfish wish just because I'm like, but I do wish that we had a little extra closure just for my sake. I hope that Susan E. continues to write books because they are such fast reads and I love her. So this was a really good book and I gave it 4 stars, which is about the same rating I've been giving all the other ones. The next book I read was Lola and the Boy Next Door by Stephanie Perkins. This book follows Lola and Cricket. Cricket is a boy that just moved in next door, but he and Lola have a past because he's lived next door to her before. It's all about their drama. Lola being very weird and having a very strange style of clothing where she wears wigs and new accessories every single day. I was not a big fan of this one. I really liked the first book, Anna and the French Kiss. I haven't read it in years, but I remember just being obsessed with Anna and Etienne. I knew going into this that Lola was the way she was, being very peculiar, having a very weird taste in clothing and things like that, and I emerged from this book feeling the exact same way I thought I would. I think Lola was a little bit too unique, too quirky to the point of being ingenuine. It seemed that she was doing it for attention. I don't know, it just felt weird to me. But then again, on the other hand, I pretty much liked everything else except for Lola. I liked Cricket, I liked her gay parents, I liked the drama that was going on behind the scenes. I liked the writing especially. Stephanie Perkins is a great YA contemporary romance summary type author. I just thought that it was a little bit too typical YA, typical, so I just said typical twice, cheesy, predictable romance. I gave this 3.5 stars. I did end up reading Isla and Happily Ever After next, and I love how throughout these books you get to see the story arcs of the existing characters from the previous books. I loved this book is what I'm trying to say. Is I gave this book 4 stars and I thought it was so much better than Lola, but I can't recommend not reading Lola, so I don't know. I loved Isla and Josh in this book. This book I did not know takes place back in Paris where Anna and Etienne were, which I thought was so cute and I was so happy. I thought that Isla and Josh were both great characters, great personalities, way more genuine than Lola was. It was funny, it was cute, it was feelsy, it was great. I was literally underneath Gabby's bed reading this for like an hour as she took a nap. It was fun bonding time for both of us. I don't know, I just liked this book so much more than the previous one, and it was cute and it was everything I wanted, and it did get angsty in the middle, but I think it was a very realistic sort of angst. Like I understood where Isla was coming from and her fears and her worries. This is again sort of a predictable and cheesy romance. You know it's typical and you know how it's gonna end, so you're just going into it for a light read. I think these books are good, but maybe not worth the hype. Don't hurt me. But Anna and the French Kiss is definitely a must read if you have not picked up the first one. And then I have one more book to talk about, which I technically finished at like 2 AM November 1st, but I'm gonna mention this one anyway because I know by the time I talk about it next month I will have forgotten everything about it. So while it's still fresh in my mind, let's go. I read Binge by Tyler Oakley. It just has a ton of chapters talking about his life and things that he's never talked about in videos, and that's the reason why I bought this, is because I'm a fan of Tyler Oakley, I would say. I don't watch his videos religiously, but I do think he's a good person. I like him. I'm supporting him by buying this. First of all, let me say this book delivered what I wanted it for. It did have a lot of really interesting backstory on Tyler, and I got to know more about him, and I did appreciate that, but I had a lot of problems with it. The tone that he takes on is kind of entitled. He kind of has to boast his internet fame a little bit. It rubbed off very wrong to me, and I did not like the way this was narrated. The way that he speaks, it feels like he's writing to a 12-year-old. It just seems like he's talking to someone like he thinks we're stupid. He writes as if he's talking in a video, and I think this would have been a way better video than it would be a book. And so if some people are saying it might be better reading the audiobook, I would recommend checking out the audiobook if you have any sort of interest in this book, because it'll probably be narrated better that way. Although this had a very weird and unsettling tone, it was good in the end. It had its funny moments. As you can see, I did mark a couple of quotes which I liked. He brings up really valid points. The entire point of this book, why it's called Binge, is he's saying binge on the things that bring fulfillment and happiness and satisfaction and make you feel alive. So the point of this book is a really healthy, really good goal to be writing a book about. But again, you gotta question, like, does this exist only for money reasons because they're famous, or is this an actual product that he wanted us to hear about? I would recommend this book to anyone who's a big Tyler Oakley fan. I would say if you're more of a casual fan, you might not get as much out of this. I gave this book about 3.5 stars. It was entertaining, but it made me question, like, is he deserving of having his own book? That sounds very mean, like, you don't deserve writing a book, but I kind of want to hear your thoughts about it. Am I just rambling about entitlement? If you've read this book, let me know how you feel about it, or in general how you feel about YouTubers having books. This is the only YouTuber book I've ever read. I don't think I'll be purchasing more in the future unless it's by a person who I really, really adore, or any one of my booktube friends. So thank you all so much for watching this wrap-up. Special thanks to Gabrielle in the background, just chilling. Beautiful job. Round of applause. I hope you all are having a great month so far, even though it's like November 2nd. I hope you all are having a wonderful life. Okay, goodbye everyone.